Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to another episode of Geeks Watch. Today, we're finally going to talk about Wheel of Time Season 1, the Amazon show. This came out well over a year ago. I should have talked about it a lot sooner than this, but I haven't yet. And Season 2 came out a little while ago, and I haven't watched that yet. But before I do, I figured I'd talk about Season 1 for a bit. Wheel of Time is based on Robert Jordan's acclaimed and very popular Wheel of Time series of books. This particular Season 1 episode is based on the first novel, The Eye of the World. Now, when I and many fans of Robert Jordan's books first heard that Amazon was doing a series, we were very excited and hopeful. The cast looked amazing. Production values looked really good. From my own personal perspective, I knew that there were certain things that they couldn't translate well. I knew there would be some changes from book to film. There always is. I know that the character of Lan would be very difficult to portray the way he's described in the books. He's described as ultra stoic, a face like a granite mountain, but very large, physically imposing, but with a lot of physical grace. He's like a master swordsman. He moves very fluidly and almost like a predator constantly. That's the kind of thing you can describe, but you can't do very well in a film. You can't find someone to embody all of that. I knew they would make some changes to that character, and there were things like that I knew that they would. I was prepared for that. And they did, they made some changes to the character. They made him more, more personable, more casual, less stoic. I was okay with that. But okay, before I get too further into my discussions of the changes and stuff, let's go over briefly what the story is. The story centers about a group of young people from a small remote village called Amon's Field in the Two Rivers area of this particular world. Very remote. They basically raise sheep and grow tobacco. They call tobacco. Make apple brandy, that kind of stuff. Very, very small, remote village in the foothills of the mountains, way off the edge of the map. This woman who is an Aes Sedai, a group of women who are very powerful politically, and also one of the only groups of people left who can wield magic. Only women can wield magic. There was some event that happened thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, which corrupted the magic that men use. Magic has been broken. Magic is, by nature in the creation of the universe, broken up into two halves, the male half and the female half. Women use the female half, men use the male half. The male half of the power has been corrupted. And men who try and use it go insane. Those are some big themes of the story, big portions of the story. Anyway, one of these youths from this village is supposedly an important figure. He's like a figure of prophecy, but they don't know which one. So this woman shows up to try and collect them to her, bring them with her to try and figure out which one is supposed to be the one to fulfill the prophecy. They journey from Amon's Field, through the kingdoms. She leads them, through one of the main characters is Randall Thor. There are other three. There's Matt, who is a friend of his. There's Perrin, who's also a friend of his. There's a woman who comes with them, a young girl from the village who comes with them, a Gwen. She wants to learn to be an Aes Sedai. Another woman comes with them. Crap, I can't remember her name now. It's gonna bug me. I should have written this down. I should have needed to write this down. Gwen. Shit. Anywho, these 5 kids, they have adventures. They meet new people. The dark forces, attack the village of Amon's Field. They're hounding them throughout, the journey. They get separated. They come back together again. They finally reach the Eye of the World, where they are set upon by some villains from history who were thought to be myth. Along with, there's some similarities between this and Lord of the Rings. there's a Dark Lord who wants to, remake the world in his own image. He has these dark agents that send out fades, which you can be kind of are similar to the ring wraiths. Not exactly, they're not exact parallels, but there's a lot of similarities in the stories. I believe this was at least influenced by Tolkien's work. Not in a bad way. I mean, this work stands on its own. The book is very, very good. But, they reach the eye of the world. Rand al'Thor is the one who can actually tap into the power of the eye of the world and use it. Turns out he's the guy for the prophecy. Matt and Perrin are just closely related to him and linked to him, as are the other characters from Amon's Field. And, bad guys show up. They have this big climatic battle, and they win. But it progresses from there. This is the first book in the series. The series wound up being 15 books long. Robert Jordan passed away before he was finished writing them, and he gave his notes to his wife, and his wife got Brandon Sanderson to finish out the last couple books of the series. Wound up being 15. But this is the first book. This book was designed to be a standalone story. And I've just gone over the broad strokes. There are lots of little details that I've left out. Characters that they come in contact with, characters that they meet. A lot of which were left out of that's from happened in the book that was left out of the series. So let's get into the series. Those are the broad strokes. But to get down to the nitty-gritty, there were some things I thought they did extremely well. There's a secondary character named Logain, who we never really get to see all that much of in the books. But they give him, like, in the series, they have like an opening sequence, which is meant for be a lot of world building and stuff like that, and plot exposition. And the opening sequences are excellent. All of them are really, really good. Even if they're not really related to there are scenes we didn't get to see necessarily in the books, or or they're taken from further in the, future episodes or future references from the books that they brought into like the opening sequences. I thought those little opening bits were really, really, really well done. The production, the costuming, the cinematography. I only have a couple complaints about that, and those complaints were basically due to, they had to do some reshoots. This was during COVID. They were trying to film during COVID. They had to shut down production. They had to go. One of the actor who played Matt left before the series was finished filming, which they had to then rewrite stuff to kind of write him out in some way, which is not, so cinematography, the stuff they had to reshoot does not look as good. But the costuming, the set design, the production quality of this is top notch. I cannot criticize that at all. It is really, really, really good. The opening sequences are excellent. The little story montages that they tell, they do such a good job of those. Some of them are completely original. Some of them are, again, plot exposition from future books. All really well done. Like I said, one with Logain, which was original. They didn't really show parts of it in the book, but I thought the introduction that used Logain was excellent. And I thought some of the things that were done, there was a scene that a lot of people complained about with Lan. There's a scene where they go over the funeral for a warder. Lan is a warder. Warders are bound to their Aes Sedai. He works with Moiraine. Not works with, but he's her warder. But it basically translates to being a bodyguard. It's more than that. It's more detailed than that. But, Aes Sedai have their warders. And they do a funeral for one of the warders in the series. And a lot of people complained about it because Lan shows grief, this is the completely original in the series, has nothing to do with the books, does not reference the books at all. But it was really well done. And the way it was done was that the warders, because they're doomed to die. They are bodyguards for powerful women who are both powerful magically, they can use magic, but they're also powerful political figures. They are targets. And these men put their lives in between their Aes Sedai and any threats that come to them. So, warders live violent lives, and they frequently die in service to their Aes Sedai. And in the funeral, they show it's part of the warders' culture in the series, where they choose one person to grieve, and it's their duty. And Lan as a character is all about duty, which they do show in the series and they emphasize in the books. It is Lan's duty to carry the grief for all warders for the death of this one man. And people complain because he shows emotion in this scene and doesn't show it in the books at all. He's very, very reserved in the books. But it was portrayed as part of his duty. And, you know, he takes his duty very seriously. So I really appreciated that scene. I thought it was well done. So going over the things that I liked, let's get back to things I didn't like, which there was a lot of. And I realized some of it had some purpose to it. You know, books are different than films. There's a visual. There are things they do for visual shorthand, like the Aes Sedai. When they use magic, when they're using it, they all use the same gesture. Like when they're doing a similar thing, you know, when they're all making the wind blow, they all make the same gesture. When they're all, as an example, you know, when they're making lamps burnt, you know, come into light, they all use the same gesture. So it's visual shorthand, but it's really unnecessary and it's very. I understand why they did it. It just was, I think it was a bad choice on their part. The other part for the Aes Sedai that was bad is that in the books and the series, the Aes Sedai have a ring that's awarded to them when they are, you know, when they come to apprentice, when they pass a certain level of apprenticeship. For the Aes Sedai, they're given a ring. And in the books, the rings are very small and subtle because Aes Sedai frequently, as their targets, and everyone likes them, they frequently don't wear them all the time. They frequently travel incognito. And yet when we first meet Morianne, she just flashes her ring and it's this big, ugly, massive, gaudy thing. And I hate them. Visually, I understand why they did it, to make it easy to see, but you don't need to. You know, it doesn't need to be this big bauble on someone's index finger. Just, it's supposed to be a simple gold ring of like a snake eating its tail, small, you know, mildly heavy like a man's ring, but beyond that, nothing ostentatious. And it annoys the hell out of me. It's unnecessary. It's an unnecessary addition. Those might seem to be some picky details. They made some changes otherwise. The other things that I really strongly disagree with, because they tried to update it for a modern audience and it was unnecessary. They make the town of Aemonsfield, where these 5 youths are from, to be multicultural, to be ethnically diverse. There's, you know, people from other blacks, but I have no problem with, you know, diversity. But it's part of the central storyline that this is an isolated village and has been isolated for thousands of years. Very few people leave, very few people come in. Rand al'Thor sticks out like a sore thumb. He's supposed to. His father went away to fight in a war, came back with a foreign, you know, an outlander bride. You know, the people in this area are supposed to be ethnically isolated. They're supposed to be inbred mountain hicks. Not necessarily that badly, but they're an isolated town who has lived away from everyone else for hundreds and hundreds of years. They're not supposed to be diverse. It's part of the story. It's part of the, you know, Rand is supposed to stand out as not being like people from Aemonsfield. He's tall, he's pale-skinned, he has red hair. He's, you know, there's a reason for this area to be, you know, not diverse. They also aged up the characters. They had them in relationships, whereas these were like they were supposed to be teenagers. These were youths. You know, Rand was like, everyone thought that Rand was going to marry or court Egwene as a character, and he, you know, they hadn't done it. They hadn't actually made any formal declarations. It was just, they were just becoming young adults. And the series, they have them being already in a romantic relationship, you know, a physical relationship. It was unnecessary. You know, it's, you know, Perrin is my biggest complaint. For everything they've done, I will not forgive them for what they've done to Perrin. And I'm going to spoil some stuff here because I am so strongly against what they did to Perrin. In the books, Perrin is just this. He's a very large. He's a blacksmith's apprentice. He's a very large, powerful man, young man, but he's also aware of how strong he is, and he tries very hard to be gentle. He's a very gentle soul in a very large, powerful body. And, you know, he's very shy and awkward, and he doesn't talk very much. In the series, they have him married. He's not an apprentice anymore. He's a full blacksmith in the village. He's married. And he ends up accidentally killing his wife. That's the spoiler. That is horrible. She was fridged. If you don't know what the expression of fridging a woman is, look up the internet. I'm not going to explain that. But it made me so angry. There's all kinds of other elements of Perrin's story that they ignore. I think the actor they got to portray him was excellent. They did Perrin so wrong in so many ways. They had him secretly pining for a Gwen, and he only married this other woman because a Gwen was promised, you know, a Gwen was with Rand al'Thor. There's this whole crap around what they did with Perrin as a character. They do some stuff. I'll leave it at that because I could go on for hours about how wrong they treated Perrin. Matt's character, they changed a lot, but that's also partly because the actor left. From what I understand, no one's ever come forward and said exactly why he left, but it seems to be a personal reason. No one had any animosity towards him. Since we don't know, I have to only speculate, but it was something personal and probably something very tragic. I don't know how tragic, but maybe illness with him, maybe problems with him, could have been something with his family. No one knows. No one outside the cast and the crew knows, and they're not talking, and they don't need to. So some of the changes that happened with him were kind of crappy, but you know, you kind of can sympathize. You know, they had no choice. And I think some of my other criticisms, they left a lot out, which again, it's a thick book. And I can't blame this all on the series creators because they wanted more. They wanted to do a bigger show. They wanted to have a 2-hour pilot and then 10 episodes. Apple only gave them 8 episodes, no pilot. So they're missing out. There was 3 hours of the story that they wanted to add, which probably would have been all the extra stuff that they should have had. Because this, as a series, there's a lot of stuff that is hinted about that you only realize is important later on. Characters were introduced to, which we were not introduced to in the series. You know, side journeys that were left out. These things were important and they were completely ignored. So I blame some of that on Amazon because I think if we'd had the additional 3 or 4 hours worth of story that the series creator had wanted, it might have fleshed things out a bit. There are some changes I can't forgive. Perrin being the obvious one. And just some of the other unnecessary changes. You know, that I've got nothing against diversity, but when it's against the story itself, you don't need to be diverse in everything. You know, I know that sounds bad, I guess, but you know, there's a time and a place for everything. And sometimes the story requires that you not be diverse. You know, there's a reason these people are all white, with no people of Asian or Black descent. I mean, in the world there is an entire culture of Asian people and an entire culture of Black people, and they are isolated and segregated. But there is also an established reason for this. These people are isolated for a reason. You know, Emmonsfield is all white for a reason. You know, the majority of the Black people are living in this area for a reason, you know, and it's not racism. These people here, you know, and these reasons are explained eventually. Plus, I mean, it's not like we're living in the modern world where people can travel, you know, easily. You know, people in medieval times did travel, but just not globally. And aging the kids up, having them in relationships, and I could go on, and I've already gone on for way too long. As much as I wanted to like this, they just, and I tried to look at it openly. I know they make changes because it's a different medium. I knew some changes had to happen because of a different medium, and because you need to represent things visually as opposed to describing them verbally. And I think I did a fairly good job of stepping myself back and saying, okay, this change was made for this reason. I can, even if it might bother me personally, I can at least support this decision to change because I understand the reasons why it was made. But man, some of the things were just so unnecessary and badly done. And it was hard because they did some things so very, very well that when they didn't do them well, it was horrible. Honestly, season 1 left a bad taste in my mouth. It made me want to go reread the first book again. And it's a 500-page book. I would rather read those 500 pages than go through season 1 again. I so wanted to love this. And I hate to criticize it. I don't, obviously the people worked very hard on this. And I hate to be this critical of things that I know people put their heart and soul into. But I gotta. There was just some of these changes, some of these things that were done when there was no excuse for, especially when they obviously knew they understood the characters so well. You know, they could have done so much better. And they didn't. I will watch season 2. Not today, but I will do it eventually. Even doing this review left a bad taste in my mouth. And I've gone on for way longer than I usually do. But it's also a full season of 8 episodes. I would have longer than this for most than anything else I've done in a while. I can't give this a grade because I have such mixed feelings about it. I think if you've never read the books, give it a watch. It's not as bad as people like me who are passionate about the books tear it up way more than people who don't. That said, I have watched reviews from people who didn't read the books, and there were things they were just as critical of as I was. Not everything, because they didn't know the story as well. But yeah, there's definitely some things that didn't hold up well, and some things that do. For people who don't read the books, they'd probably give it a B. For someone who loves the books, I gotta give it a D. Maybe a C. I'll give it a straight C. Give it a C because they did some stuff very well. So, not a good, but not as horrible as it could have been. As always, thank you for watching. If you listen to this, why would you bother? And until next time, good hunting.